Good morning. Welcome to the Lafayette Bar Foundation's Champions of Justice program. Abraham Lincoln said that a lawyer's time and advice are his stock and trade. And this morning, we want to thank and honor those lawyers who have so freely given of their time and their advice and brought dignity and respect to those in our community that need legal services but don't have the means to afford them. I want to begin by mentioning and thanking our staff who has done everything to make this possible. Pam Landish is our executive director. Marilyn Lopez is the director of the Pro Bono Services. Caitlin Guidry is the director of marketing and membership. Jessica McNabb is the events coordinator. And Cheryl Robichaud is our administrative assistant. They work hard, they work well together, and they care. They care not only about our clients that we serve, but the lawyers who provide that service, and they make it as easy as they can on us. So thank you all very much. I'd also like to thank our gift sponsor for this program, the Ottinger Hebert firm, who was kind enough to provide these beautiful umbrellas to all the lawyers that have taken cases for us. So thank you very much, Pat, and all your firm. I'd like to ask Judge Marilyn Castle to provide an opening prayer for us.
Right, good morning. In this crazy time, I'm sorry that we're not all here together and can't be seeing each other. So those of us who are here are thinking about you at home, who are probably sitting there in your pajamas. But we're at least thankful that we can be together in this way. I'd ask all of you to please bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, in this time of such turmoil, we need your strength and guidance. Help us to be instruments of your love and caring for mankind. Bless those who we recognize here today for their service to others. Awaken the hearts of all of us to the needs of others. Thank you for the blessings and the bounty you have bestowed upon us and our nation. Keep us mindful of the teachings of your Son, Jesus, who made the ultimate sacrifice for us. Let us seek ways in which we may follow his examples. All things are possible through you, Lord. Open our hearts and minds to those possibilities. Give us the wisdom, humility, and compassion to accept your guidance. We pray for all of these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Judge. We would call upon Magistrate Judge Michael Hill, City Marshal Michael Hill, both of them to come on up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thanks, John. You know, we often recite the pledge, pardon me, we recite the pledge by rote. This morning, as we recite the pledge, I'd like to ask you to think about the words that we recite instead of just doing it by rote. With that, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to, at this point, introduce our keynote speaker, Judge Jonathan Perry. Judge Perry was born and raised in Kaplan, and after college, Judge Perry's had a very interesting and varied career. After college, he enrolled in the police academy, where he was awarded the John Dooley Hardy Award for the most hardest working cadet. Also, he was elected the cadet president while in the academy. He rose to the rank of sergeant and then decided that he wanted to pursue a legal career and got his degree from law school. Then he returned to Kaplan and opened the Perry Law Firm, where he practiced for many years serving as an assistant district attorney for the 15th Judicial District Court. And then he was elected to the Kaplan City Council, the Louisiana House of Representatives, Louisiana State Senate, and in 2018, the Third Circuit Court of Appeal. With his background, we thought it would be appropriate to have him come and express his thoughts about volunteer lawyers. But there was also another reason that we chose to have him come. Judge Perry has a second career as a Cajun comedian, so we thought it might be a good opportunity for him to speak to you all this morning. Judge Perry?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mr. John. This is going to be very awkward because I'm trying to think, do I need to talk to this, large crowd we have here, or do I look at the camera? So I'm going to do the camera, and I hope it doesn't offend any of you. I want to first take a moment to go along kind of what Judge Castro mentioned. I want to take a moment and acknowledge all those who have been affected by the hurricanes, Laura, Delta, and just most recently, Zelda. 2020 has been a very difficult year for many in the legal profession. And I ask that we all keep praying for those who are still struggling to get their lives back to normal. What I thought was appropriate, I've used this in some political forums previously, but it applies. When a hurricane comes, and in a political setting, I used to say when issues would come. But when a hurricane comes, the hurricane doesn't knock on the door and say, what area of the law do you practice? It does not ask what party affiliation you are, whether you're Republican, Democrat, does not ask your race, does not ask your age, does not ask you anything about your religious affiliation. It would just come and damage all of us. So with that, I think it is a reminder that we are all in this recovery together. And so I just continue to say that we need to pray for everyone in there. So let me start by saying what an absolute honor and privilege it is for me to be here this morning. Mr. John kind of hit on it. When he called me, truthfully, a lot of times I get calls to come and do some type of comedy, far more than even talking about legal aspects. And so when Mr. John called and said, look, I'd like for you to come and be the keynote speaker for the 2020 Champions of Justice, I was surprised because of all that we've been through in 2020. Again, I thought he was calling me to come maybe do some comedy, and I wasn't that far off. He said, well, I'd like you to maybe shine some light on the dark days that we're currently going through. So as he mentioned, and some of you may or may not know, I've been doing professional clean Cajun comedy for about 17 years. Some people find that very strange. Being a politician, that kind of goes hand in hand. But once you get to the bench, some people say, well, being a judge and doing comedy doesn't really seem to go together. And I will tell you, I don't disagree with that. The initial reaction when someone hears, well, he's a judge, but he also does comedy, oftentimes is confusion. Like, what do you mean? What type of thing? How does that work? How is that not professional? And if you would just bear with me, I'm going to get to that. So trying to give a keynote speech during 2020, as you can imagine, is much more difficult than it has been in previous years because we've been affected so much. So last night when I was preparing what to talk about, my wife actually said, you look nervous for this. She says, you don't get nervous. And I said, well, I actually am, because the people I'm going to be talking to are the people I typically judge. And undoubtedly, they're going to be judging me this morning on how I do. So that's a little bit more pressure than what I'm used to. So when I sat down to think about what I was going to say this morning and what can I say that's going to do anything for the attorneys in the Acadiana area, specifically those that are going to be recognized this morning, as it's often happened in the past, I always go back to my comfort blanket. And my comfort blanket has always been, for probably over 20 years, comedy and humor. It's just part of me. So I'd like to tell you exactly what I mean about always going back to comedy and humor, and what exactly does that have to do with attorneys being recognized this morning, specifically for their community service. Again, please bear with me. I hope to have this all make sense and make a full circle when it gets there. So I got involved in Cajun comedy as a way of relieving stress. The stress of actually practicing law, but more so it actually started when I was in law school. And I'd like to briefly tell you how that came about because it's going to make sense and tie into who we're recognizing this morning. I know nobody thinks that's going to happen, but I promise you it's going to tie back in. So I got involved in doing professional comedy in 2003. The reason I remember that, my last year of law school. And as many in the Acadiana area remember, there used to be a event held at the Hyman Center, which was a Cajun All-Star event that was nonprofit put on as a way to give up funds for goodwill. And so in 2003, my wife and I went to that. I had always heard about it. It had been going on for many years at that point. And as we sat down, the program, there were 5 comedians. Now, I would tell you, I always think I had a sense of humor, but never considered myself a comedian, okay? So as we sit there, I'm looking through the program, and the program lists the 5 comedians who are going to perform that evening. And all 5 of them had been past winners of what was then called the International Cajun Joke Telling Contest. It was held in Opelousas at the Yambly Festival building. They would have a contest, usually really anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people would show up, and it was just a huge event. So I remember sitting next to my wife, and let me stop here. My wife does not remotely think I'm funny, okay? So I leaned to her, and I remember this, 2003. I said, I'd love to see how I could get into that contest and be able to do it. And like it was yesterday, I remember her looking at me, putting her head down. She says, I hope you never find out how to enter that contest. Now, why? It has nothing to do with whether I'm funny or not. To her, she knew if I did, it would consume me. I would stay focused, and I would do everything I could to win this contest. So approximately 2 weeks later, I saw it advertised in the newspaper. They were looking for contestants. Well, what did I do? I did the right thing. I didn't tell my wife, but I did call. And I said, okay, look, how does this? So make a long story short, it ended up being what was considered the 16th annual International Cajun Joke Telling Contest at the Yambly Festival in Opelousas, St. Landry Parish. So there was 8 contestants, strict rules. You get up, you do your comedy. Professional media and professional scouts were there and judging you on cleanness of your jokes, authentic, how authentic you were with your Cajun accent, or was it fake or whatever, which by the way, I don't have one. Thank you, just got that. So I enter and I win. Okay. I'm thinking that's it. I'm done. That was my limelight and I'm finished. Unbeknownst to me, 2 weeks later, I get my first call to go and do a comedy for a corporate event. Baton Rouge, lady from Baton Rouge Corporation calls me and says, how much would you charge to come to Baton Rouge and do about 30 minutes for an annual luncheon? And true, I said, I don't understand. What do you mean charge? I could not fathom that someone was going to pay me to go and do Cajun comedy. So I called the lady that put on the organization of the joke telling contest, and she says, you don't understand what you can do with this, can you? I said, obviously I don't. So I worked very hard at it. I had mentors, Mr. Murray Comp, Mr. Dave Pettijohn, Kent Gonsalves, and AJ Smith, who all helped me, took me under their wing, and really did a good job. It probably knocked out about 15 years of trial and error. I took their criticism seriously and I applied it. What does that have to do with why I'm here this morning? Because probably in the 17 years that I've been doing comedy, that is my ministry back to the community. Do I charge for events? Yes, but I have done, I would submit to you in 17 years, probably over 100 events at no charge for nonprofits, for communities, for fundraisers, things of that nature. And it's a way for me to be able to take the talent that God has given me and give back to the community. much like those that we're going to recognize this morning. So the community service part is what I think is so special about what we're doing this morning. And, you know, a lot of times, and Judge Council, you'll say this, or you'll agree with it, I think. A lot of times when people become judges, they oftentimes think, well, you know, I'm higher now, I'm better, and, you know, things of that nature. Well, I would submit to you this morning that I have to openly apologize, because when Mr. John called me to do this event, I'm embarrassed to say, but I apologize. I didn't know much about the Bar Foundation. And the reason being is because I think it is so important for all attorneys in Acadiana to become involved, to learn about specifically this morning, the Lafayette Bar Association and the Lafayette Bar Foundation, and what it can do. And you're going to hear a lot of what it can do and a lot of why these attorneys are special in the Acadiana area. And that what brings us here today is to recognize those attorneys who are oftentimes, I consider, public servants first and attorneys second. That's not easy to do. A lot of times when you're a public servant first and attorney second, you're not making all the money that some people think that the attorneys are making. But it's a community service. It's a ministry back to the programs that the Lafayette Bar Foundation offer to the community, allows the community and its citizens to see a side of attorneys. When I first ran for public office, 2017, I felt a calling to run for state representative. When I sat down with the consultants, okay, they said, take your website down, don't do any more comedy, don't do anything, because they're going to take those words, they're going to take the videos, and they're going to use that against you. What I found was opposite. More people knew me and related to me because of my comedy, because of my community service to them, than even as an elected official or an attorney. And that is what is important about recognizing these attorneys this morning. You know, the Bar Foundation, we're gonna recognize those that allow the community to have free service. Its citizens, it allows our citizens to see another side of attorneys. The most often it's overlooked, most often not seen, and unfortunately, the most oftentimes it is not recognized, the service that these attorneys do. Well, this morning, these attorneys are in fact going to be recognized and honored for their service. And again, that is why I'm so honored and humbled to be before you this morning, able to speak to you and touch base on how important the Lafayette Bar Foundation is, not only to the legal community, but their overall general community and our fellow citizens. Lafayette Bar Foundation, and I'm taking this and citing it from their website. Lafayette Bar Foundation, LBF, emphasizes the importance of giving back to the community through its various legal programs offered to the public. The foundation could not be successful without the attorneys who volunteer their time and talents. Without the contributions of the support and volunteers and partners, LBF could not have helped so many in our community in Acadiana and further the foundation's goal of equal access and justice for all. The foundation is grateful to its volunteers for the efforts they make to change the lives of those in need, and those volunteers will be honored this morning. Lafayette Bar Foundation provides pro bono, free legal education programs and guidance to indigent, low income, or disadvantaged within our community. These programs do not in any way replace the services that can be provided by hiring an attorney. In fact, they recommend if you have the means to hire an attorney, or they strongly suggest that you do if you have the means to do that. A list of the attorneys can also be found on their website. But this time, if you allow me, I'd like to mention some of those programs, and Mr. John will then come up and recognize those that's going to get awards for those programs. programs, the help program. The Homeless Experience Legal Protection Program was founded in November 2005 after Hurricane Katrina and Rita left so many desolate and in need of help. It was a huge impact on the lives of those who are trying to find, at that time, shelter and obtain jobs. Now listen to this, I think this is important. Without proper identification, shelters will not allow a person to stay overnight, and job applications are almost impossible. The HELP program, in fact, helps to smooth out this process for people without the financial means. Volunteer attorneys help homeless individuals obtain certified copies of birth certificates as sustainable documents to provide and prove their identity. Council on Call program. Council on Call program is a pro bono program which provides self-represented litigants an opportunity to privately discuss legal matters with volunteer attorneys. Participants are assisted on a first-come, first-served basis and are limited to a 15-minute conference with a volunteer attorney. Understand how important that is to those in the community that cannot afford even an initial consultation with an attorney. That is huge, y'all. Protective Order Panel. This program provides an attorney for clients that are in domestic violence situations and that have filed a TRO, temporary restraining order, in Lafayette Parish under Title 46. Referral cases from ALSC, Acadiana Legal Services Corporation, refers cases to Lafayette volunteer lawyers known as LVL for placement with a volunteer attorney. Most of the cases are family law matters, bankruptcies, and simple successions. And lastly, seminars. During free legal seminars, a licensed attorney presents legal education on various topics, including but not limited to divorce, child custody, tenant rights, and bankruptcies. These seminars are strictly to educate members of the community. The attorneys do not provide direct legal services, but how important it is for them to get that free, at least foundational education of the legal system and let them know what they're up against. So as I go to close, I'm going to issue a challenge. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'll publicly apologize for not knowing all of what the Lafayette Bar Foundation does. And I want to challenge those attorneys in Acadiana to step up, be involved, find your ministry in the legal profession, whatever that is, and move forward to be able to help those in the community that may not have the resources to do it. And what kind of keynote speaker would I be if I did not leave y'all with a couple of stories? So the first one I'd like to tell you, these are all true stories, documented. First time Mr. John and I met was actually at the Lafayette Parish Courthouse. Just so happened we were both on a docket, different cases, but both on the same docket. We were in front of Judge Castle. Well, we're walking in, and Judge Castle, she's on time. Don't be late. So I find this square looking thing in the hallway. Many of y'all haven't seen it. I really wasn't used to it. And it had all kinds of stuff in it, chips and candy and peanuts and all these different things. So I saw it had 75 cents on it. So I took out $1 and I put $1 in there and I hit a button. I'd never seen this before. Bag of chip pops to the bottom. So I take that bag of chip and I look, I'm like, then a quarter fell. I actually heard change. So Mr. John goes into the courtroom. Judge Castle calls the docket, and when they called me, I wasn't in the courtroom. Well, thank goodness Mr. John remembered seeing me. He comes out to tell me, look, they're starting a docket. You need to get in there. I must have had 10 bags of chips. I must have had 8 Snickers, 6 bags of peanuts. And Mr. John says, JP, what are you doing? You need to get in there. She's about to call you. And I said, look, you're going to have to go and tell Judge Castle. I am not quitting until I stop winning. I have never been this lucky. So that's actually how me and Mr. John met. And as I touched on at the beginning, a lot of us have been through storms the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, especially Laura, to our friends, Southwest Calcasieu area. So when Hurricane Delta came through for Maine Parish, we did, get a good amount of damage, specifically at my house. So Mr. John calls me and he says, JP, is there anything I can do? I said, well, we just, got a little bit of shingle damage and things of that nature. I said, but Mr. John, I'll tell you what, I don't have a chainsaw. I said, we had a magnolia tree that had some substantial damage, got a limb on the home. He says, not a problem. He says, look, give me a couple hours. He said, I'm gonna drive down. He said, I'll bring you my chainsaw. You can about imagine how relieved I was. So he comes, he brings it to me. Didn't even get out, just drove up. I got it out the back of the truck. I said, thank you so much. He said, if you need something, let us know. So about 3 days later, he calls, he says, man, how's everything going? I said, well, it's slower than we thought, but it could always be worse. He says, look, I'm off this afternoon. How about if I come and give you a hand? I said, Mr. John, you don't have to, but I won't turn it down. That would be great. So when he drives up, I can see him kind of scratching his head. And I'm out there. I've been out there that day, third day. I'd probably been out 8 hours that day. I mean, sweating, just soaking wet. And I saw Mr. John kind of scratch his head, like, I said, what's John? He said, JP, it doesn't look like y'all got a lot done. I said, Mr. John, this is the 4th day. I said, we're doing everything we can, but everybody's damaged. There's a lot of stuff going on. He says, did the chainsaw help? I said, it did. I said, but it's still just a slow process. And he says, well, kind of show me what you've done so far. We go to a magnolia tree, and I showed him, in the last 4 days, I had this one branch. I mean, it was probably this big. I gotten that off in that halt to the road. He said, well, what else did you get done? I said, so far, that's all I've done. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, it's just, that's all the chainsaw can do. And he said, well, let me see, maybe it's something's wrong. It's not working correctly or whatever. So he primes it up, he starts it, and he takes off. So I stopped and said, Mr. John, I said, what's that noise? What's the noise on the chainsaw? You got that, Judge? And so let me wrap it up with this. So, everywhere as I travel, people always say, any good Boudreaux or Thibodeau jokes. Like, that doesn't apply in Vermilion Parish. In Vermilion Parish is Gaspar and Guidry. You might have a two-ched every now and then. Well, so Gaspar, his son walks up to him, got home from school. Son walks up and he says, Dad, I have a question I need to talk to you about. His son was probably 12 years old. He said, not a problem. He said, son, I will always be honest with you. He said, let's sit down and have a talk. He could tell it was serious. So his son says, Dad, he says, we're talking about names in school and the origin of how someone gets a name, specifically a first name. And he says, a couple of the kids laughed whenever I told them my older sister's name was Paris. He said, so Dad, I'd like to be able to go back and explain why did your mom name her Paris? Dad looks down at him and he said, well, he said, son, that's actually where your sister was conceived, was in Paris. And we just thought it was so fitting that we would name her that. And he thought that was the coolest thing. He knew he'd be able to go back and explain that to the other students. So as he's walking away, son turns around and he says, Dad, he says, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for always allowing me to come to you with these important issues. And without hesitation, you're always honest with me. He said, no problem, Karen Crow. Thank y'all so much again. God bless y'all, and I hope everything goes well. Thanks y'all.
Barry, thank you so very much. I do want to mention that I agree with you totally. Most people do not know what the Lafayette Bar Foundation does, even members of our bar. So I would encourage everybody to spread the good news, what it is that we do. I don't have any particular jokes to follow that up with, but the only thing, as I mentioned earlier, Abraham Lincoln, his quote, and I do recall one time Abraham Lincoln was speaking and he said someone had said that he was two-faced. And he said, two-faced, you think if I had two faces, I'd be wearing this one? So I remember that. So, I would like to call Marilyn to come up and stand with me. We're going to present the names of the award recipients. And what she did is she has calculated a point system for those that have volunteered to take cases through the Lafayette Volunteer Lawyers, the pro bono program for protective orders, the help program, the council on call, and public seminars. I think that covered it. All right. Well, our first, we have 19 recipients this year, and I want to thank every one of them for giving of their time and talent to the members of our community that need legal services. The first recipient is Joshua Barnhill. And in the old days, we would ask Joshua to come stand up, but what we did is we got a picture of Joshua that you'll see on your screen there.
The next recipient is Stuart Broke.
Claire Edwards.
Valerie Garrett.
Courtney Hillary.
Jessica Haypack.
Jonathan Jarrett.
David Kaufman.
Gregory Corey.
Emily Lachele.
Lindsay Nutter Young.
Tyler Minnick.
Christine Meir.
Christopher Artie.
Diane Schneers.
Geraldine Seeker.
Philip Smith.
Kenneth St. Pay.
And L. Sean Trahan. Thank you all very much for everything that you have done to help those members of our community and bring them dignity and respect. Thank you. Now, we have some overall awards that have been calculated that we want to make. The Outstanding Council on Call Award is the ones that the judge talked about on Friday. A self-represented litigant can come and have a 15-minute conference with an attorney. David Kaufman is the winner of that recipient for the most consultations. Thank you, David. The Outstanding Protective Order Award goes to Jonathan Jarrett. Jonathan has obtained the most protective orders for those that are victims of domestic abuse who need police and judicial protection. And with an attorney, they are more encouraged to go forward and seek these orders. The Outstanding Help Award goes to Joshua Barnhill. Joshua has spent the most time helping the homeless obtain birth certificates, which, as the judge said, can lead to ID cards, which will allow for shelter, job opportunities, and many other things that they're not able to otherwise get. Our Outstanding Pro Bono Award is for the most number of overall cases in the various categories of opportunities that we have. Jonathan Jarrett is the award recipient for taking the most cases. Thank you, Jonathan. Then we have the Firm Awards, and the Outstanding Solo Practitioner is the Jarrett Law Firm. I think we're seeing a pattern here with what Jonathan is giving back to our community, and we're so grateful for that. The Outstanding Small Firm is 2 to 7 people, and that is the Claire Edwards Law Firm, who've rendered outstanding service to the members of our community. The outstanding medium-sized firm is 8 to 14 lawyers. And this year it's Galloway, Johnson, Tompkins, Burr, and Smith, of which Lindsay Metter is a member of that firm. The outstanding large law firm is 15 plus lawyers, and it's the Nooner Pate firm, who, again, every year you see them mentioned for all the work they do. And then I want to recognize our Tammy Derwin Outstanding Service to the Bar winner, Lindsay Metter Young. This is someone who's demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to aid those in need. Lindsay has always been willing to help with whatever was needed by the Bar Foundation. She has a history of service to the community. In 2010, she was awarded the Louisiana State Bar Young Lawyers Pro Bono Award. In 2011, she received the Lafayette Volunteer Lawyer Outstanding Attorney Award. She has served as the chair of our LVL Lafayette Volunteer Lawyers Pro Bono program for several years and has agreed to accept that position again for next year. She served on the Bar Association for Lafayette Parish Board for several years and the Bar Foundation Board and continues to do so. She's taken on many cases, those referred from Acadian Legal Service Corporation, pro bono, protective order cases, counsel on call. She was actually our first virtual counsel on call that we've had. And she's given seminars on various things to the public and has volunteered to mentor a young lawyer that needed some training to be able to take some of these cases. So Lindsay, we thank you so very much for everything that you've done. We appreciate that, and so do your clients. Next, to present the Stephen J. Mott Outstanding Young Lawyer Pro Bono Award is Miles and Glenn Mott.
Thank you, John. I'm going to ask that you folks maybe present today indulge me just a second because this is the first time we do this. And while it may be difficult, I hope it's something that takes off. And the objective of this is to perhaps in some kind of way give young lawyers in our community a little better incentive, a little better or more incentive to do volunteer work. April of last year, we lost our son, Stephen Mott, left us far too early. And he was a young attorney, full of zeal and passion to learn the law. He actually loved the law. What he loved more than the law was to help people in the community. He found a niche in our local community through the Lafayette Parish Bar Foundation to volunteer his time. He realized early that those who lack the finances and access to our profession, but find themselves in need of legal assistance for their family, he showed a lot of heart, as does the award recipient. If the recipient of this inaugural award, the Stephen James Mott Beyond the Books Award. Now, my wife Glenda came up with that because Stephen loved books. We couldn't say beyond the computer because a lot of lawyers use computer now, but Stephen loved books, and we all know that books are the law. But looking to community services, looking beyond books, it's looking to actually help people. And what we want to do is establish this award annually to a person with very little entry-level experience, but has a zeal and a passion to help the underprivileged. So the Stephen James Mott Beyond the Books Award is also given to a young lawyer, less than 2 years in practice, passionate toward his new profession, not only starting his own practice, but working part-time with the Public Defender's Office while holding a registered nurse degree, helping on the front lines, particularly in this COVID situation we find ourselves. It's clear that this year, the recipient has gone beyond the books to reach out and give of himself enthusiastically. the 2020 recipient of the Stephen James Mott Award and a $500 cash award from the Miles and Glenda Mott families is Sean Trahome. Congratulations, Sean.
Thank you both very, very much. In closing, I want to thank all the lawyers that have participated in the volunteer program and encourage, as the judge did, encourage everyone to become a part of this and help serve the public. Because not only will you make a positive change in their lives, but it can make a positive change in your life too by helping others. And to demonstrate that, I want to leave you with some quotes by some of our recipients that were our latest promulgator that came out just a couple of days ago. David Kaufman wrote, "I believe that every lawyer who participates in volunteering will find his or her own rewarding experience, and I strongly encourage everyone to volunteer." Jonathan Jarrett wrote, "It is not often in the law practice that things are clearly right or wrong, but helping someone who has survived abuse is always right. The core causes and solutions for domestic violence are complex and varied, but I just have to help one person at a time." And Lindsay Metter-Young wrote, "We are given certain opportunities and skill sets as attorneys that many people cannot access because of their financial restraints. They are always so thankful and relieved just to feel like they have someone fighting for them. So I would encourage you to fight for those that need help in our community." With that, I would close with a prayer. You may see on your program that was Marilyn Castle. Marilyn had to leave, and I'm obviously not Marilyn Castle, so, but if you would just bow your heads. Dear God, we thank you for the privilege of being able to share this time together and honor those volunteers that have so freely given of their time and talents to help those in need. Amen. Thank you all for joining.